The forest was silent that night. No wind, no crickets, not even the distant howl of an animal. Just silence. The narrator's voice is low, deliberate, chilling. They say this forest hides a mansion that doesn't appear on any map. No one builds roads to it. No one claims it. Because once you enter, it remembers you. A faint humming echoes through the trees, soft like a lullaby. 5 friends thought it was just an urban legend, a weekend thrill, a story to laugh about later. But legends are warnings disguised as entertainment. Headlights cut through the fog. The outline of the mansion appears, towering between the trees like a waiting shadow. Its windows stare back like empty eyes. They didn't know the house had been listening for years, and tonight it finally heard someone coming. The car door opens. One step onto the wet leaves. The narrator whispers the final line like a curse. Once you cross that gate, the house decides if you ever leave. The road grew narrower as the forest thickened. Tall trees stretched over the cracked path like skeletal hands, their branches clawing at the fading sky. The sound of the car engine was the only thing breaking the silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The narrator's voice is slow and ominous. Some places are hidden for a reason. Not because they are forgotten, but because they remember. A group of 5 friends had set out for a weekend road trip, an escape from the noise of the city. They'd heard rumors of an old mansion deep within the forest, abandoned decades ago, untouched, unreachable. It was said to belong to a wealthy family that vanished one night without a trace. Some said it was cursed. Others claimed the forest itself kept intruders away. But curiosity is louder than warnings. As they drove deeper, their GPS lost signal. The road turned to dirt, then to uneven stone. The trees closed in tighter, their headlights struggling to pierce the darkness. The forest grew unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes your heartbeat sound louder. They finally reached a clearing. There it stood, an enormous, decaying mansion swallowed by the forest. Its windows were black, its walls strangled by vines, its gates half buried in earth. It looked less like a house and more like a tomb. The narrator whispers slowly. The mansion had been waiting. The forest had guarded its secrets for years. But tonight, the silence had been broken. They stepped out of the car, the ground soft with wet leaves. An old iron gate hung crookedly, creaking in the faint wind. Beyond it, the path to the mansion was lined with statues, figures with eroded faces, their stone eyes fixed toward the house, as if warning anyone who entered. As they approached, a strange thing happened. The forest behind them grew darker, as if night had fallen all at once. Their phones showed no signal. The car lights dimmed. A distant howl echoed through the trees. Not an animal, not human, something in between. The narrator's tone lowers, deliberate and cold. They should have turned back. But some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. They pushed open the heavy mansion doors. A rush of cold air escaped, carrying the scent of wet wood and something older, something dead. Dust swirled in their flashlight beams. A grand staircase rose from the center of the hall, cracked but still imposing. Paintings with torn faces hung on the walls. The air inside was dense. Every sound echoed like it belonged to someone else. A chandelier above them swung slowly, though no wind reached it. One of them laughed nervously, calling it the perfect horror movie setting. But their voices felt out of place here, like shouting jokes inside a church. The narrator whispers, chilling and soft. They had crossed the threshold, and the house had begun to listen. From somewhere deep inside the mansion, a single knock echoed. Then another. Then silence. Their flashlights flickered once, twice, then steadied, but the door behind them had closed on its own. The mansion swallowed their footsteps. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like whispers in a cathedral. Their flashlights cut through the heavy air, revealing long hallways with peeling wallpaper and portraits with eyes that seemed to follow. The narrator's voice drops, slow and tense. In old houses, silence is never empty. It's full of what once lived there and what refuses to leave. They decided to explore together, none of them willing to split up yet. The grand hall opened into multiple corridors, each darker than the last. As they moved, the temperature dropped sharply. Their breath turned visible in the beams of their lights. One of the friends noticed strange symbols etched into the walls, deep carvings, like claw marks but too deliberate, forming spirals and crooked runes. They looked older than the house itself. The narrator whispers, "These were not decorations. They were warnings carved by hands that never left." They entered a dusty drawing room. Old furniture sat under white sheets like sleeping corpses. In the corner stood a grand piano, its keys yellowed with age. Without warning, a single note played slowly, deliberately. They froze. The room was still. No one was near the piano. The narrator's tone tightens. When the living enter the space of the dead, sometimes the dead answer. A faint sound echoed from the floor above. Soft footsteps, too light to be human, moving quickly down the hallway. Everyone turned their flashlights toward the staircase, but saw nothing. They tried to shake it off. Maybe an animal, maybe the house settling, maybe anything but what it sounded like. They kept moving. One friend found an old photograph on a cracked mantelpiece, an image of a family of 5, standing proudly in front of the very same mansion. But their faces had been violently scratched out, leaving only faint outlines. On the back, a message was scrawled in faded ink, "Do not answer her voice." The narrator slows down, whispering. The house was not abandoned. It had rules, and the first rule was written for those who could still read. Suddenly, from the hallway, a woman's voice echoed. Faint, distant, like a song carried through the walls. It was soft, almost sweet, humming an old tune. They followed the sound, drawn like moths to a flame. It led them to a locked door beneath the staircase. The singing stopped the moment they touched the handle. The lock was rusted, ancient, but the door trembled lightly, as if something on the other side was breathing. The narrator's tone becomes cold and precise. There are doors in old houses that were sealed for a reason. Some things are not meant to be opened, not by hands that belong to the living. Before they could decide what to do, the chandelier above them swayed violently. Every light bulb burst at once, plunging the mansion into darkness. And in that moment of absolute black, they heard it, a whisper, right behind them. Not from one mouth, from many. The mansion was pitch black. Their flashlights had died all at once, as if something had reached into the wires and snuffed out their light. The narrator's voice is low and deliberate. When darkness arrives in a place like this, it doesn't just cover things. It reveals what was always there. They stood frozen, breathing hard. The whispers were everywhere, around them, above them, inside the walls. Dozens of voices overlapping in a language they couldn't understand. High and low, soft and sharp, like a choir of the damned. Someone fumbled for their phone light, but it wouldn't turn on. One by one, every device failed. Even their car key remotes stopped working. They backed toward the main door, but when they reached it, it was locked. The iron handle was ice cold, almost burning their skin. No matter how hard they pulled, the door wouldn't move. The narrator whispers, The house had closed its mouth, and they were now inside its throat. Panic began to set in. They ran toward the windows, but the outside looked different. The forest that had surrounded the mansion was gone, replaced by thick black fog. It pressed against the glass like a living thing. One friend, trembling, shouted that this wasn't real, that old houses don't trap people, that ghosts don't exist. But the house answered. From the hallway behind them came the sound of footsteps. Slow, heavy, one step at a time, as if something was walking on wooden bones. The narrator slows down, each word cutting through the silence. They were not alone anymore. Whatever had been waiting in the walls had decided to come closer. The group scattered instinctively, each grabbing a candle from an old shelf and lighting it with a single working match. The flickering light revealed something horrifying. On the walls of the hallway, dozens of handprints appeared, some small, some impossibly long, all pressed into the plaster from the inside out. They regrouped near the staircase, breathing hard. That's when one of them noticed something strange, muddy footprints on the floor, leading up the stairs. But there were only 4 of them in the hall. The 5th friend was gone. The narrator's voice sharpens. In old places, people don't disappear. They're taken. They called out her name. No answer. The only response was a soft humming, the same woman's song, drifting down from the upper floor. The footprints led upward, vanishing into the dark corridor above. The group hesitated. Every instinct screamed at them to stay where they were. But fear has a way of pushing people forward, even when it should hold them back. Candlelight in hand, they began to climb. The steps groaned under their weight. Halfway up, one of the candles flickered violently. Shadows on the walls twisted unnaturally, moving against the flame's direction. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched endlessly, lined with closed doors. The humming grew louder, clearer. It wasn't just a woman singing anymore. It was layered, like multiple voices imitating one. The narrator whispers coldly. They were walking deeper into the house's memory, and the house remembered everything. One of the doors creaked open by itself at the end of the hallway. Inside, something moved. The hallway was silent now, except for the faint humming that seemed to leak from the half-open door at the end. Candlelight trembled as they approached, throwing nervous shadows across peeling wallpaper. The narrator's voice deepens, slow and steady. Some rooms in old houses don't hold furniture. They hold memories, and memories can rot. They pushed the door open. The room inside was strange, preserved as if time had frozen decades ago. Heavy curtains hung over tall windows. A dusty cradle sat in the corner, unmoving. An oil lamp burned faintly on a table, but no one had lit it. The missing friend was nowhere to be seen. As they stepped inside, the door behind them slammed shut with a thunderous crack. Every candle went out except one. The narrator whispers. The house was no longer testing them. It was choosing them. On the walls, faint outlines began to appear. Handwritten messages, layered over each other, bleeding through the paint like stains. One of the friends raised the candle closer and read aloud in a shaky voice. She sings to those who listen. She keeps what answers. The cradle creaked, slowly, back and forth. Even though the air in the room was still, they edged closer. Inside the cradle lay a bundle wrapped in decayed cloth. It was moving. The narrator's tone becomes razor, sharp, whispering. What they mistook for a child had never been born. One of them reached out trembling and pulled back the cloth. Inside was a withered, shriveled thing, not a baby, but a bundle of hair and bone fragments tied together with red thread. Its eye sockets were empty, But the moment the light hit it, the humming stopped. Silence. Then, a scream, not human, erupted from the walls. The windows shattered inward, the candle blew out. In total darkness, something began to crawl across the ceiling above them. Fast. They lit the candle again with shaking hands. The light revealed long, pale arms gripping the beams overhead. A face hung upside down, hollow eyes, stretched mouth, strands of black hair dangling like wet ropes. The narrator whispers slowly, each word like a chill down the spine. She had been waiting, and now she had found someone to replace what she lost. The creature dropped silently to the floor behind them. They bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if invisible hands were pushing it shut from the other side. One friend slammed their shoulder into it again, and again until suddenly it flew open, throwing them all into the hallway. When they turned around, the room was empty. No cradle, no messages on the wall, just an abandoned, dusty space like every other. The narrator's tone lowers, cold and reflective. The house doesn't show its secrets to everyone, only to those it wants to keep. And their missing friend was still gone. The hallway seemed longer now. The doors looked different. The air grew thick with a smell like damp earth and rust. It wasn't just the house anymore. It felt like the forest itself had crept inside. The narrator's voice drops, slow and unnerving. When you stay too long in a place that remembers, it begins to rewrite your path, until escape is no longer part of the story. The group moved in silence, their faces pale and eyes wide. They called the missing friend's name again and again, their voices echoing down the corridor. But the house swallowed every sound. They reached a spiral staircase leading downward. A cold draft rose from below, carrying with it the faint sound of crying, soft, broken sobs. The narrator whispers, "Old houses hide their secrets underground. The foundations hold what the walls cannot." They descended slowly. The steps were narrow, slick with moisture, and seemed to go on forever. At the bottom, they found a heavy wooden door. It was covered in the same strange carvings they'd seen earlier, spirals, runes, handprints. The crying was louder now. It wasn't just one voice. It sounded like many layered, as if a chorus of lost souls were trapped behind the door. One friend grabbed a rusted iron bar and forced the door open. A wave of cold air burst out, carrying the scent of decay. The basement stretched into darkness. Their candlelight revealed stone walls, dripping with water. Chains hung from the ceiling. Old furniture was stacked like barricades. In the center of the room stood an altar, carved from black stone, stained dark with something long dried. The narrator's tone sharpens. This was no ordinary house. It was a place of offering, a place where the living had once fed the dead. On the wall behind the altar, dozens of photographs were pinned. People who had entered this house over the years, hikers, explorers, families, faces frozen in time, and among them, their missing friend's photo. It hadn't been taken earlier. It looked old, decades old. Their hands trembled. Something shifted in the shadows behind the altar. A shape emerged, tall, thin, draped in tattered fabric. Its face was covered by a veil of black lace, but underneath, hollow eyes burned faintly. The humming began again, closer now, clearer. The narrator whispers slowly, icy cold. She was never just a ghost. She was the keeper of this house, and the house was her mouth. The lights went out. In the dark, screams erupted. Not from the group, but from the walls themselves, like the house was alive and mourning. One friend was dragged backward, their nails scraping across the floor, as if pulled by unseen hands. The others chased, their candles useless now, their footsteps echoing endlessly. The basement shifted around them. Corridors appeared where there had been none. Rooms twisted and looped. It was no longer a house. It was a maze. The narrator's tone deepens. The house was changing, adapting, feeding. Somewhere in the distance, their missing friend's voice called out faintly. But it wasn't quite right. It echoed with another voice layered beneath it, hers. The basement corridors twisted like a living organism. Every turn led them deeper, not out. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the house itself was breathing. The narrator's voice lowers, slow and cold. Some houses are not built on land. They are built on memories, and memories do not have exits. The group ran through endless passageways, their candles snuffed out one by one. The air grew thicker. The cries and whispers grew louder, overlapping until it sounded like a storm of voices trapped beneath the earth. They finally stumbled into a large chamber, the heart of the house. In the center stood the missing friend. She was facing the wall, completely still. Her hands were pressed flat against the stone, as if listening. The narrator whispers. She was no longer lost. She was listening to something that didn't belong to this world. They called her name, but she didn't respond. Slowly, she turned her head toward them. Her eyes were wide and black, reflecting candlelight that wasn't there. Her lips moved, whispering something too faint to hear. Behind her, the wall began to crack. Not like stone breaking, like skin splitting open. From the darkness within, pale arms began to reach out, one by one. Long, thin, trembling fingers clawed their way into the room. The humming returned, louder than ever, vibrating through their bones. The narrator's tone sharpens, deliberate. This was the true mouth of the house, and it was hungry. The group tried to run back the way they came, but the chamber doors slammed shut. The floor beneath them shifted, tilting as if the house itself was pulling them downward. The ghostly figure in the veil emerged again, standing behind their friend. She lifted a single bony hand and placed it on the girl's shoulder. Instantly, the crying stopped. The whispers ceased. Silence. Then the girl smiled, a wide, unnatural smile that didn't belong to her. One of the friends screamed her name. The sound echoed like it was being swallowed whole. The narrator whispers coldly. She wasn't their friend anymore. She was the house's echo. They pushed against the walls, kicked at the doors, but the chamber held firm. In the corner of the room, they noticed something. A narrow staircase spiraling upward into darkness. With no other choice, they ran toward it. The staircase was steep, endless. Their breaths turned to frantic gasps. The humming faded behind them, but the house groaned, as if shifting its weight. Finally, a faint light appeared ahead, a door. They burst through, and found themselves in the main hallway, right where they had started. The front doors stood open. Outside, the forest was still, bathed in moonlight. They ran. They didn't look back. The narrator's tone slows, thoughtful and icy. They thought they had escaped. But houses like this don't let go. They only wait. At the edge of the clearing, they turned around. The mansion stood silent. Its windows were dark, its gates still crooked. Nothing seemed different, except for one thing. In the upstairs window, a figure stood watching them, veiled, unmoving, and next to her their missing friend, smiling. The wind shifted. The forest grew quiet again. The narrator whispers the final lines, like a chilling lullaby. Some houses don't want to be found. And when you do, they make sure you never truly leave. The mansion's door slowly creaked shut. Cut to black.